welcome to Awesemo Fantasy Football. Are you tired of the industry consensus? Are you sick of that groupthink mentality? Then try our data-driven approach from the world's #1 daily fantasy football player, Alex Awesemo Baker. Alex has loaned his projections expertise creating our first ever set of premium season-long fantasy football rankings. Head on over to awesemo.com to find out more about our different approach to fantasy football. Now, let's dive into how those rankings would attack drafting from the 108. At the 108, we go Miles Sanders here. This pick was taken before we got news of Miles Sanders. A bit of an injury scare in training camp, but supposedly this is nothing holding him back from starting week one. And with that being said, Sanders was incredible in his rookie season, specifically the fact that he was used in all facets of the game. He went over 800 yards on the ground and over 500 through the air. Only Saquon Barkley has hit both of those marks since the year 2000. Awesemo's rankings actually like Lamar Jackson here better, but using data from hundreds of real drafts, we can say that at the 17th pick, he makes it back there about 60% of the time, so no need to reach for him and miss out on an elite back like Sanders. And in fact, Lamar Jackson does make it back here at the 205, only on the back of someone drafting Patrick Mahomes ahead of him, and Awesemo's rankings find that to be absurd. The Ravens finished the season with an average scoring margin of 13.7 points. That mark is the highest since the New England Patriots in 2007. That made it easy for the team not to necessarily lean on Jackson. We saw him come out of multiple fourth quarters, and he didn't have to even play the final game of their regular season. When Baltimore isn't winning by at least 2 scores every game, Jackson will finally be unleashed. And their only loss since September in the playoffs, Jackson threw 365 yards and rushed for another 143 versus the Titans. And we could see more of that in 2020. At the 308, the pick here is Todd Gurley. Alternative pick, a similar style of player, Leonard Fournette, but we ultimately go with Gurley inside with Awesemo's projections. Drafting Gurley is simply a bet on volume being the most important factor in fantasy success. Devonta Freeman, leaving the Falcons, leaves behind 184 rushes and most importantly, a whopping 70 targets, and he only played in 14 games. Opportunity is the reason you draft Gurley, and him potentially regaining some efficiency that we saw in years prior is the upside at this pick. At the 405, looks like we're building a Falcon stack here with Calvin Ridley. At the age of 30, Julio Jones just posted his worst season by overall yards, going just under 14. Still incredible, but it is his worst season by overall yards in the past 6 years, while Ridley, on the other hand, improves his receiving yards per game to 66.6 and his yards per target to 9.3. And he is the only 25, and he's only 25 to start the season. He will overtake Jones at some point. If it happens this year, great. If it doesn't, he is still the 1B on an offense that is passing at a prolific rate. At the 405, it makes a ton of sense to get him. At the 508, one of maybe 5 to 6 picks that Awesemo's projections are making the MVP of this draft series. James Conner with David Johnson being alternative. At this point, we're just taking James Conner, so we're not picking David Johnson in every draft, but James Conner, an awesome value in the 5th round. Awesemo's projections like him to a 2nd-round player. Conner's 2019 season just kind of has to be wiped away from the collective fantasy football consciousness. The Steelers' offense was horrid, and it doesn't really do us great using those numbers to project their 2020 outcome. In 2018, when the team had Ben Roethlisberger, James Conner was more healthy, and it's really what we should expect from 2020. James Conner was 11th in carries at 215 and 13th in targets at 71 while playing just 13 games. That's incredible volume to get in the 5th round. Awesemo's projections, again, liken him to a 2nd-round pick. At the 605, Terry McLaurin. McLaurin was incredible at making the most out of a horrible situation in 2019. He posted 919 yards and scored 7 times on just 58 catches. He accomplished this while playing for a Washington offense that averaged 175.8 passing yards per game. 32nd in the league. There are only 32 teams in the league. They were the worst passing offense, and they had a 10-yard gap to go to get to 31st. If Dwayne Haskins even takes a little modest step like we saw towards the end of the season last year toward mediocrity in his 2nd season, McLaurin will absolutely crush his value in drafts. In the 7th round, we go Devin Singletary. Singletary making his, I believe, 2nd appearance in this draft series. We saw last year Josh Allen was often used as a goal line back, but so was Frank Gore. Frank Gore is no longer with the team. Gore finished 12th in the league with 11 carries inside the 5. Singletary isn't guaranteed that role. The team did draft Zach Moss in the 3rd round. However, he is the incumbent coming off a rookie season that saw him display absolutely incredible tackle-breaking skills. If he does net some of that goal line work, Singletary will absolutely crush his ADP. At 805, Tyler Higbee. Higbee, a guy Awesemo's projections aren't absolutely over head over heels with, but generally do like. In weeks 13 through 17, Higbee posted 43 catches for 522 yards. That pace would be good for 138 catches and over 1,600 yards on a full season. He's not going to do that, but that's fine at this ADP. He's going to come back down to earth. But even if you cut that production literally in half, he would still be a tight end 1 based on the finishes of last year's tight ends. At the 908, Marvin Jones. Jones played 8 games with Matthew Stafford and Kenny Golladay in the lineup in 2019. He averaged 5.3 catches for 66.9 yards and 0.8 scores during that stretch. The Lions' defense has absolutely crumbled, and they can't assemble a rushing game to save Amir Abdul's career. As long as they're an air raid light, Jones is an absolute steal this late in drafts. At the 10:05, Emmanuel Sanders is the pick. Fantasy players should be looking to get talented players on offensive powerhouses, and Sanders is just that. He averaged 9.5 yards per target with the 49ers and now gets to play with Drew Brees on a Saints team that is really without a second receiver after letting Ted Ginn walk in free agency. This doesn't have to be complicated. You take Emmanuel Sanders when he's paired with Drew Brees. This team is a middle round tight end and the best fantasy quarterback in the history of the game. That allows it to only go after receivers and high upside back in the double-digit rounds, a luxury that few teams can afford and can really give it a massive edge if it nails a few of those late-round picks. Guys, that's going to do it for this Awesemo Fantasy Football video. Make sure you like the video and then comment with someone you wish this team would have taken or someone you wish this team wouldn't have taken in these 10 rounds that you saw. Don't hesitate to head on over to awesemo.com/fantasy football to sign up for our draft kit. It includes a ton of awesome features, our rankings, projections, and most importantly, the draft wingman, which will help you build optimal lineups for your best ball and season-long leagues. You get all of this and so much more for just $29.95, so go on and check that out. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next video.